Sachs for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Johnson, for joining us here today. Mr. Johnson, I'd like to start with the fact that you're one of the founding members of the foundation. And can you explain why you took on the role of chair of the board of directors in 2021?
Yes, I was asked to chair it. I'd been I'd been a member since 2002, involved since '01. So involved over a long period of time. I joined the board in 2011, and the outgoing chair and I gather a number of members of the board of directors asked if I would take on the chair.
And as a founding member of the foundation, what was the initial mandate? And maybe you could speak to that and how its operations have evolved and carried us through the past 22 years of the work that you've done, that the foundation has done, rather, in terms of supporting scholars.
Okay. I should add, I'm having difficulty with picking up the floor feed, but I can hear it well enough without my earphone. Well, we operate under a funding agreement from the Government of Canada, overseen by ISED, the ISED department, the Innovation Department. And that sets out pretty strict parameters on our program and requirements for our program.
Sure.
Requires that we do scholarships, mentorships, fellowships, public international interaction program, and provide the scholars with opportunities to move outside their narrow fields of study and become exposed to other aspects of Canada and the world, from government, from meeting senior people in government, to going abroad and meeting people abroad.
Thank you for that. And just to clarify, when the foundation was formed through ISED, as you mentioned, did all political parties support the creation of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation?
There was cross-party support throughout the House. There was one party that there was never a vote, but there was one party that was a little less enthusiastic than the others, but the rest were overwhelmingly in favor, and the speeches on that occasion back in February 2002 are quite moving, and from all the parties.
So it was. You would be able to say that the Trudeau Foundation is a nonpartisan.
Very much so.
Organization.
From the get-go.
And the staff are all screened to that effect. And as part of your governance structure, are all your staff screened to that effect?
Are all our staff which?
Screened to that effect in terms of being nonpartisan?
Not formally, but fact is I don't recall any identifiable party people involved with the staffing of the foundation.
Okay, and the previous witnesses that were here made pretty clear that in their opinion there was no foreign influence in terms of this specific donation, and as you've indicated, it was not $1 million, as some colleagues keep quoting, but as a matter of fact, it was a $200,000 donation that the foundation only received $140,000. But when the Globe and Mail article came to light, did you feel that it tainted the ability of the foundation to keep the donation, just in terms of the high level of integrity of scholarship and work that it's done over the past 22 years?
Correct, and we felt that we did not want to have that smear hanging over us, and we are special because of our name, particularly, and we're vulnerable to political attack, and so that was very much operating on our mind.
So maintaining the integrity of the foundation and the good work that it's done over the past 22 years was the priority in that decision-making process?
Absolutely.
The donation? Very
much so.
And how has this process impacted the foundation in terms of the work that it's doing right now?
Well, it has not impacted our work. We are working ahead, and our staff are working energetically, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, to implement our program and to move to the next steps in the natural flow of our program. We hope to be naming a scholar cohort, a new scholar cohort very soon.
Okay.
And we have a number of scholar-related leadership events in the works.
And I'll just lead to that. Chair, how much time do I have? About a minute. So just leading into that, you mentioned scholarship events. Are any of those scholarship events, previously testimony has indicated that these events are nonpartisan?
Correct.
In their activities. So can you confirm that the activities of the foundation are in fact nonpartisan?
Absolutely, I can.
Okay. And are the scholarship recipients vetted?
Vetted?
In terms of their partisan or ideological?
Not at all.
So the criteria of a scholar to participate in what is known as a prestigious program is done how?
Well, there's an intensive interview process, application process, and through the review of applications, and then the interviews with semifinalists and selection of finalists. It's a long and very intensive, labor-intensive process.
Right. And I'll ask this last question. Since you have been with the foundation for the past 22 years, you've seen its evolution. Do you see the process of the governance structure having grown over time to be robust in its consideration of all its activities?
Yes, I believe it is.
Very quick response.
Very much
Thank
so.
you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Hepfner, 5 minutes. Go ahead, please. And there is 16 minutes left before the vote. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being here to answer our questions today. So far in this study at this committee, we've learned from Pascal Fournier, Maurice Rosenberg, and Alexandre Trudeau that the Foundation is not a partisan organization. Staff are not selected or screened based on partisan background, and that no one in the organization lobbied to participate in political events. They also confirmed that the foundation was never pressured to do any Canada-China conferences, that the association that made the donation never asked that any conferences be done, that the foundation never felt an obligation to respond on Canada-China relations as a result of the donation, that there was never any intervention to choose academics from China, and that there was no interference in the operation of the foundation. We have learned that the foundation had no relationship with the government, that neither Madame Fournier nor Mr. Rosenberg nor Mr. Trudeau had any business or political relationship with the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister's staff. In fact, to quote Madame Fournier, the Prime Minister was not invited and did not receive any documentation from our boards of directors, our membership meetings, and our government committees. He did not receive invitations or materials of any kind. Do you agree with those statements? Thank you. So we've heard from all three witnesses so far in this study that there has been no foreign interference in this case, in this study. We heard from Mr. Trudeau that there was no intent to influence the Justin Trudeau government by a donation to the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. There was no mystery around the identity of the donors or their affiliation. There was nothing illegitimate about his signing of the donation contract. He said there were no irregularities around the issuance of the charitable receipt, no inappropriate or unusual instructions from the donor to the foundation, no refusal on the part of certain board members to recuse themselves from an investigation of the donation, no legal advice from the foundation's lawyers that certain board members had a conflict of interest and that governance charges were required, and that the foundation did not seek to influence the government of Justin Trudeau or even had any connection with the government of Justin Trudeau. Do you agree with all those statements as well, sir?
Yes, I do. To the best of my knowledge, that is correct.
Thank you. So in the last meeting, I asked Alexandre Trudeau if any relationship exists between the foundation and the Trudeau government. And Mr. Trudeau responded, there never has been. No. It's an academic institution that does scholarship work. There is the relation to the Ministry of Innovation, now that it's called Industry, as I remember when we started, which is a reporting duty, which we do, and all of those are available. But that's a civil service relationship, monitoring the contract that was granted to the foundation at its creation to administer these scholarships, fellowships, and mentorship. That's a relationship. There is no political relationship, and there never has been. Do you agree with that as well?
I do indeed.
You do. Sir, are you having trouble hearing me with the chatter going across the table there?
My sound pickup seems to be a bit sporadic. Again,
Chair,
yeah.
maybe you could ask the members to be more respectful across the table?
I've asked the members to keep it down
Okay.
a little bit here.
Sorry, I just heard chatter.
I've asked the members to keep it down in their conversation. Go ahead, Ms. Hepfner.
Okay, thank you. So when asked about Beijing consular officials who attended meetings with the foundation to arrange the donation, Mr. Trudeau responded, "I wasn't at any meeting. Maybe there was on the signing ceremony. One of the issues that you have to understand is that donors, Mr. Zhang Bin and Mr. Niu Genxing, don't speak a word of English. A lot of the time you're thinking that they're using consular officials as basically free and appropriate translation services as opposed to getting someone who's not trained in that kind of diplomatic translation." Do you know anything about this, sir? Do you have any input on that
I'm
statement?
afraid I don't. I wasn't there.
Okay. When Mr. Alexandre Trudeau was asked about why his signature was needed during those meetings, he responded, I think, to Mr. Barrett saying, "Do you understand why?" He said, "I was giving the approval for the Université de Montréal to use the name of my father. I was acting as a family member to say that the Université de Montréal could use the name of Pierre Trudeau to launch a scholarship program." Since you've been with the foundation since its inception, I wonder if you have any insight into this statement.
I don't know if I can add to what you've said. It's that was what I heard Alexandre Trudeau say here a few days ago, and as I say, I was not involved at the time when any of that of the goings on around the donation, so I can't really.
Does it make sense to you, though,
Okay,
that would be the reason?
That's the
Quickly?
quick
Thank you.
answer.
Oh, yes,
That's the
yeah, it
amount of
certainly
time
does.
that we have. Thank you. Mr. Bains, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Johnson, for joining us today. During Mr. Rosenberg's appearance on the 28th of April, he said that the gift in question was intended for lectures to be delivered in collaboration with the University of Montreal. Why did the donation go unused by the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation between 2016 and 2023?
I can't. I don't know. The explanation that was given to me, so I have this secondhand, is that once the original news articles appeared in, I think, 16 or 17, raising questions about whether or not this might have been intended for some kind of political influence. Neither the donor nor the foundation management pursued the notion of the seminars originally intended and originally discussed in the what I'm told was the run-up to the donation, and no, there was no effort, to the best of my knowledge, from the donor to ask for something else to be done.
Thank you. And the foundation board is made up of independent members, ISI appointees, and members of the Pierre Trudeau estate. What's the interplay between the three types of board members?
They all work together. There have been no government members for a number of years on the board. So we are left with the regular members, who are, I believe, 14, and two family members named by the family. And the interplay among them and between them is there is no distinction.
Okay, and Can you confirm that the independent members of the board control the majority of the board?
Or you mean the non-family members?
The independent members of the board. So non-family or whoever the independent members are.
Yeah, non-family, non-government members absolutely control the board.
Okay, and in our last committee meeting, Mr. Trudeau said that the board had a consensus to create an independent committee. Was this the case?
There was no. The consensus went the other way at the March 31st board meeting where this was discussed. I had recommended the creation of the independent committee. The board, however, some directors said they thought it would be better if the outside review were to report to the full board. And that was the way it was left at the end of that meeting. That was a unanimous view. During the subsequent week, a rearguard view of, should we be doing this with the full board? Isn't it more appropriate that it be reporting to an independent committee of three so-called independents who are not involved in any way in the foundation in 2014 to 17. And that began to emerge. Two board members wrote to the board, one after the other, proposing that idea and proposing that the board revert to that. And then I wrote a subsequent memo, which I referred to in my opening remarks, and which I have passed to the clerk, saying that I felt there was a consensus emerging around the idea there was a consensus emerging, that consensus in the other memos from other directors who were themselves uninvolved and independent from the China events. And that we might consider moving forward on that on the basis of that consensus. I sent that on. Sorry, I sent that on.
You got like 2 seconds.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Kane.
ahead. Sorry.
So,
Okay, sorry, that's okay.
Okay, Mr. Fergus, 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I'd like to thank Mr. Johnson for being here today. Mr. Johnson, I'd like to go through a little bit of the timeline and then perhaps leave it with a general question. So I'd just like to confirm with you, Mr. Zhang had made a donation to the University of Toronto earlier than 2014 for an amount of about $800,000. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Then
And in honor of Dr. Norman Bethune, a Canadian.
That's right, in honor of Dr. Norman Bethune, who played a major role in China's modern development. Mr. Zhang also approached l'Université de Montréal in 2014 to try to make another donation regarding, in the honor of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was the Prime Minister at the time when they opened up normal relations with China. Is that correct?
That is what I understand.
So the negotiations really started then. That's when the foundation was brought in because of the use of the name of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding again, from the testimony of Alexandre Trudeau, that's right.
Fair enough. Were there any conditions, as far as you were aware of, that were attached to the donation in terms of being able to talk about China, to promote the interests of
the agreement, and I think the agreement is included in the materials that have been provided to the committee and on which I have read, and that agreement in terms of specifies what the foundation is to do, and it's pretty broad. It has a lot of latitude, but so there is. That's the framework within which the donation was to be acted upon.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. I forgot to start my clock. Can you tell me where we're at?
2 minutes and 53 seconds.
Remaining, or is that
Remaining.
Thank you, sir. Was there any contact between the foundation and the Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office?
To the very best of my knowledge, absolutely none.
Were there any contact between you, the board, and the Government of Canada, aside from your fiduciary responsibilities to ISED and perhaps to the Canada Revenue Agency?
Outside of our responsibilities to ISED, there were none, to my knowledge.
So, as far as you know, there was no quid pro quo in terms of that donation and any contact with the Government of Canada to try to influence the affairs of the Government of Canada?
As far as I know, there was none.
Once again, back in 2014, when the initial approach was made, who was Prime Minister at the time?
Was Mr. Harper, I believe.
Right. So it wasn't as if this was done with the full light that things were going to work out for the third party in the House of Commons at the time.
That's correct. It was not obvious at that time, and with one who has a political ear to the ground, it was a long shot.
Indeed, it was. Mr. Johnson, why do you do what you do? Why are you involved with the Trudeau Foundation?
I'm happy to be involved in preserving the name and recognizing a great man and a great public servant and statesman. But also, as time's gone on and we give the scholarships and have our events and so on, I've met the scholars. And every time I meet the scholars, I'm so impressed with these young, brilliant people who are going to be making huge contributions to Canada, and I'm pleased that we are able to reinforce that and perhaps expand their knowledge of the country and lead them to be more effective as leaders. We have dinners and so on with students, and during the COVID we couldn't, but every once in a while we've now been able to have them, and it's so refreshing to meet these young minds. And some of them like the young rocket scientist scholar who is working as an epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins University. Tremendously impressive.
Mr. Johnson?
Yep.
Mr. Fergus, that's 5 minutes.
Right.